January 2023, I decided to sell my project car, a 2002 Ford Mustang V6 that I had built a 6th order bandpass into. That was my first real attempt at car audio, and I was rather proud of it. I didn't really document that process, and looking back, I wish I had. I learned a lot through that endeavor and developed some skills that went beyond car audio. But we needed to sell a vehicle because at that time we were looking at getting my wife something newer than her 2009 CTS sedan, and we needed a bit of a down payment to make it happen. I could have gotten more money from the CTS, but my logical brain pointed out that the CTS was a newer car with less miles and was more reliable than a 2002 V6 Mustang. So the Mustang had to go. I drove the CTS for several months, but I told my wife its time was short and I was going to have another sport coupe or muscle car. September of 2023 came and it was time. I had the itch and I wanted to build a new system. I thoroughly considered keeping the CTS at this point and spec'd out an entire system for the car. That idea was quickly thrown out when the base build hit $3,000. I could get so many other cars and build such a nicer system for half that, so it only made sense to let the CTS go. I have documented getting the CTS ready for sale and sending it off in another video. If you're interested, please check it out. I'll link it below. So the CTS was gone, and I had money in hand combined with some savings. In the months prior, I had been researching cars on the market, and I had talked myself into a 2015 or newer Dodge Challenger. The intention of this car was to be my daily work commuter and the new platform for the stereo build. I didn't need performance, just reliability, so I elected to go with a 3.6 liter and started looking to see what was out there. About a week after I had cash in hand, on an early Saturday morning, my wife sent me a marketplace ad that had just popped up. It was only an SXT. I was kind of hoping for an SXT Plus. It was only rear-wheel drive, and I was leaning towards wanting all-wheel drive. It was also red, which I really didn't want, but I was willing to put a wrap on it if I could come in under budget. At 93,000 miles and listed at just under 16,000, I decided it was worth the drive and buying her lunch. I won't beat around the bush. I bought it and drove it home. And while, yes, 10 minutes into the test drive I knew I was going to make an offer on the car, the events of the next 5 minutes took me from making an offer to having to buy the car because there was no way I was getting away from my mistakes. I don't screw around behind the wheel of a car much, especially on surface streets, and especially with traffic. Looking back on what transpired, it's amazing that no other cars were involved. I decided to make a left off the street we were on, and I was going to turn around and head back. As the light turned green, something in my head clicked, and I nailed the throttle. I had not turned off traction control, and I had not enabled sport mode. I think I would have been more in control if I had changed those settings. At least I want to think that. The Challenger suddenly decided it wanted to do Mustang things and promptly slid directly into the curb with the rear passenger wheel. And it hit hard, and it was a tall curb. I started laughing manically at this point and quickly pulled into a church parking lot. I left the car running and jumped out to check for damage. Check for damage. Who am I trying to kid? No, I checked to see what damage I had just caused. I was convinced I was going to see a crushed control arm, or there would be diff fluid dumping out, body damage, or even a flat tire. What I did see was better than any of that. It was still visible damage to the rim that there was no way I could just shrug off, but the car appeared to have fared far better than it should have. As I'm looking the car over, I see a police car turning our way at the intersection where I had just demonstrated my ignorance. Seconds have passed at this point, and there is no way this cop didn't just witness my stupidity. I turned my attention back to looking the car over and noted that I can smell antifreeze. That's not a very likely result of what I just did. I look back up to see where the cop is, and I instinctively start to reach for my wallet. My mind is absolutely racing at this point. What sort of ticket will this result in? Will I have to call the dealer and tell him he needs to come get his car? Can I get arrested for this? When I finally put eyes on the cop, my jaw hit the ground. The cop is pulling a U-turn in behind a lifted Wrangler and kicking his lights on. He was pulling over this random Jeep. What? Why? Forget it. I jumped back in the car and we headed back to the dealership. For the entire drive, I could feel my wife quietly burning 2 eyeball-sized holes into the side of my head. She was well within her rights to do so, so I kept my mouth shut. To distract myself, I started focusing on how the car was behaving. I noticed a vibration at this point, but it felt more like a bent wheel than anything else. My mind is trying to work out how after hitting a curb that hard, the only damage the car appears to have is just the rim. Now, how do I handle this when we pull back in? Do we just pull up, leave the fob in the car, get in the Renegade, and leave? No, I am far too honest for that. Do I make an offer on the car and plan to pay karma later? Yes, absolutely. That is exactly what I'm going to do. I have decided that at this point I would pay asking price if I had to. I am going to buy the car and drive it home before I give this small business owner another reason not to trust anyone. I'm going to take a break right there. As I was researching and trying to find images and things to use in this video, I came across this. This is an ad for a red 2015 SXT that I had tried to look at the week before in the same town. I had called the gentleman and asked if the car was available to look at on a Saturday, and he responded and said yes, it absolutely was. So I drove all the way across town, pulled into their lot in a very uncomfortable part of town, started to walk into the lot, and was met by a teenage boy. And I said, I'm here to look at the red SXT Challenger, and he informed me that it had been sold. So I drove all the way across town for nothing. But now, as I'm looking back at this car, I realize this is the car I bought a little over a week later. I'm slightly irritated. I'm mostly irritated at myself for thinking that I was doing right by this dealer. I still think I did do the right thing, but what is going on with these small car dealers? Anyways, back to the story. But I'm certainly going to mention the coolant leak. After looking the car over and keeping him occupied on the leak, I determined that whatever was leaking had just developed and was likely an easy fix. I had already planned to hit him at 14,000, so I did. He came back at 14,900, and I said deal. Never mind that a week earlier it was listed 11,500. Anyways, after all the paperwork and pleasantries, I left smiling while hiding my tail between my legs. What I did was so stupid and so ignorant and a bit arrogant as well. I have not been this ashamed for a long time, and I will be reminding myself of this demonstration for years to come. But, on the bright side, I now own a 2015 Dodge Challenger SXT, and I own it outright. It is Redline Red, which is starting to wear on me. It certainly needs some paint correction, and the OEM graphics must go. Not only have they aged poorly, but they are also just not my style. I've been working on a custom billboard style graphic, which just so happens to also be my current channel and Facebook page banners. The coolant leak is twofold, but both issues are very fixable. In fact, one of them is already fixed. The issue that was most obvious that day turned out to be a pinhole in the bottom of the thermostat housing that was spraying a very fine stream onto the belt. That was a $20 and 30-minute fix. The other is the common filter housing / oil cooler failure, something these 3.6 liter Pentastar engines are notorious for. I have already purchased the Dorman aluminum upgrade and will be putting it in very shortly, and I will of course document the entire process the best I can. Look for that video to be posted under the AutoWorks series. Also, already in the works before any repairs, of course, is the stereo upgrade and subwoofer installation, which is already done and being enjoyed. Watch for those videos to kick off the AudioWorks series. Now, along with the coolant leak, which the filter housing was leaking before I bought the car, that is just common 3.6 Pentastar things, I've also noticed that Karma is looking to get paid. I found gear lube on the underside of the car, and I need to check the differential over. I'm hoping that it's just a damaged seal, but I am fully ready to pay up for a cracked housing. With all things considered, I feel like I did very well. I'm really enjoying this car. It's so much more comfortable to drive than the Mustang ever was, and it outperforms the 3.6 liter CTS by miles with a current average of 24 miles per gallon. I'm really looking forward to working on this car and bringing you along. I hope you will join me. You're more than welcome to point out my stupidity, but I hope we can all learn something together moving forward. Please like and subscribe. I suppose you should also check the notification bell. Thanks for watching.